Going on? We back for Getting Buckets episode 9 playoff recap. Um, Best time of the year, like I said, man. I want to get into these games. I've watched every one, so I'm very locked in, and I'm gonna tell y'all exactly what I've seen and how these teams are gonna go forward. But first, y'all gotta make sure y'all hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, make sure y'all share, make sure y'all locked in and tapped in. A lot of content, man, for these NBA playoffs. So make sure y'all tapped in. And with that said, man, let's get into it. I'm gonna start with the East. There's not really much to talk about. We know what's happening with Boston. Nobody thought Orlando really had a chance. Even with Jason Tatum hurting his wrist, we know where that's gonna go. So there's no need to talk about that. Cleveland, no need to really talk about that. Miami might get a game. They're going back home, but even with that, I know everybody knew Boston and Cleveland would win their first round matchups. Uh, but we can start with the Milwaukee Bucks and the Pacers, bro. And what I want to start with is that they got to help Giannis at some point, bro. Giannis got to get some help. I don't believe that the Pacers are even doing anything special. They've been at home and they play very well at home and they have good home court advantage. But I don't believe they've done anything special. If Giannis has gotten some help, especially in Game Two, Bobby came late, but I think it was a little too late when Bobby Portis came to the party. But if he can get some help from somebody, Dame finally came back. Um, and the thing with Dame is like they got to be he in particular is like he's got to get in a rhythm because he hasn't played in a month, so he's probably not for one not in basketball shape, and he's definitely probably not in NBA playoff shape yet. So he's got to work himself into shape, coming off of blood clots and being on blood thinner medication and stuff like that. So he's gonna have to give a ramp up. And so they just got to hope it comes soon enough because they've got to win Game 3. They're down 2-0. They've got to win Game 3. If they don't win Game 3, um, one, the series is over. Two, there's gonna be a conversation this summer about is Giannis still gonna be a Milwaukee Buck, and that can be the worst thing that's gonna happen in Milwaukee because if they have to tear this thing down, that means Dame is probably also gonna leave, and they're gonna ship everything out, and they're just gonna regenerate assets, and they're gonna be back in as a poverty franchise. Um, and they're not a franchise that can afford that because they're not going to be able to get any free agents. So they're really gonna have to hit through the draft like OKC did because nobody's going to play in Milwaukee. Nobody's going to play in Milwaukee as a free agent. Nobody's signing there, bro. Dame only went to Milwaukee because for one, he couldn't get to Miami, and two, Giannis was there. If Giannis ain't there, ain't nobody coming there, bro. And so if they got to get rid of him, they're gonna have a tough long rebuild, and they just gotta hope they hit. But I think that's the conversation that this series is trending to if Milwaukee doesn't tap in. And now they get to go home. So that's the good news about this. They do get to go home. Um, where the Pacers don't play as well and their role players typically won't play as well because teams in the playoffs, their role players are usually play well at home and then they're so-so on the road, if not bad on the road. So we're gonna see what the Pacers role players are gonna do right now because Miles Turner shooting the ball well, Nimhard, all these guys are playing well. But we see if they can continue that when they get to Milwaukee. Um, Very interesting, but it's imperative for Milwaukee to win Game 3 because not only are they gonna lose the series if they don't, but as I mentioned, they superstar and who I believe is the best player on the planet may not be a Milwaukee Buck come next season if they end abruptly in the playoffs. Um, so that's how I see that. That's what's on my mind in that series. Pistons Knicks, the only good series in the East so far. Um, I picked Knicks in five, and I still believe they're going to win in five because they won Game One, and they didn't play that well in Game One. But I think Game One showed the inexperience of Detroit massively. They just couldn't get out of their own way. They couldn't make shots. They were having unforced turnovers. Cade wasn't Cade. So game one was a very inexperienced game, I believe. But that's how I thought that game would go for sure. Definitely game one. I thought they'd get game two. The Pistons got out to a lead and they pretty much had to lead the whole game until clutch time hit, which is why I picked the Knicks to five because inexperience and the inability to have consistent scoring in the final 5 minutes of ball games. Um, and they were up 11 with like 3 or 4 minutes left, and all of a sudden the game got all the way down to a 2 or 3 point game, to where the Knicks had multiple good looks to ultimately take a lead or tie the game, and they just happened to miss them, and the Pistons were able to pull the game out. But but that wasn't indicative of a good championship team. And I don't believe the Knicks are necessarily a championship team because I don't believe that they can beat Boston. They probably can't even beat Cleveland. But um, against the Pistons, who have no playoff experience and they don't have another go-to guy outside of Cade, they should win the series pretty easily. The Pistons' problem is that Cade came to play in game two, but their second guy that would be your considered your second scorer is Tobias Harris. Tobias, he hasn't played too bad. In game two, he was solid. And you look at the box score, you're like, oh, he played very well. But he played well until the crunch time hit, which has always been Tobias's problem. When the big moments arise, Tobias is always a no-show. He's nowhere to be found. That's been his thing. You're seeing it right now. You've seen it all them years in Philly, and it's still, to me, I don't understand how what the GM saw to say, oh, we're gonna take Tobias Harris over Jimmy Butler. That never made no sense. Never made no sense. Tobias don't defend. Tobias ain't clutch. Tobias doesn't show up in playoff games, bro. It just is what it is. We had a large enough sample size to realize this. Um, and so that's the problem they're going to run into. I don't believe they have another go-to guy outside of Cade, and they don't have enough experience to even know what the playoffs are going to take. Um, so I just find it hard pressed to believe that they can win this series. I still believe the Knicks are going to win it relatively easily because, like I said, the Knicks didn't play well in game two, and they still cut an 11-point lead in the final 3 minutes down to 2 or 3, and they could have won the game if Mikal Bridges made a shot, if Jalen Brunson made a shot. They just happened to miss those shots. Um, the Pistons defense is good, but their offense isn't. And so as good as their defense is, it's like they can't score enough to even so their defense has to play well because their offense can't score enough points. So now what happens when the Knicks finally get going? Because the Knicks have yet to get going. And they got two guys that can go get 30 apiece in Cat and in Jalen Brunson. We also know Cat hasn't been the greatest playoff weapon either. But when you have Jalen Brunson, the load is not on Cat to be Superman. He get to be Robin. So all he got to do is make his wide open shots, which he's more than capable of doing. And so I still believe it's Knicks in five because the Pistons just don't have enough, I believe. They're 1 or 2 years away. But we'll wait and see on that. Now to the West. The West matchups have been great. Outside of Oklahoma City and the Grizzlies, we don't need to see the series no more. Nobody wants to see this. They could sit the Oklahoma City Thunder at this point can sit SGA an entire half, and they'd still blow the Memphis Grizzlies out by 20 points. The Grizzlies are awful. Something needs to be done. It doesn't help that they fired their coach midseason, but this is atrocious basketball, bro. I thought they'd get a game. Um, I don't know if that's gonna happen. They get to go back home nonetheless, but these games haven't been close. By the time the first quarter starts, to by the time they're 3 minutes into it, the Grizzlies are already down 20 points. There's nothing to watch, and they're actually showing that game tonight on TNT over the Clippers Nuggets game, which is ridiculous because the Clippers Nuggets series has probably been the best series of all the playoff series so far because each game has come down to the wire. It's ridiculous that they're actually showing that Thunder game over that one. But we don't need to talk about that Thunder series anymore because the Thunder are going to win it easily and they're going to get the Grizzlies up out of there. Now to the 2-7 matchup, Houston Rockets, Jim and the Golden State Warriors. Um, the biggest story of these first two games is now that Jimmy Butler has an injury and his status for game three is undecided now. In game one, the Warriors took it to the Houston Rockets, similar to how I thought the series would go in both that series and in the Pistons series we were just talking about, because the Rockets just don't have the youth and they don't have go-to scorers for the clutch time. And in playoffs, clutch time, to me, clutch time is the most important thing to play. Them final 5 minutes, bro. Them final 5 minutes, you cannot screw them up, and you need go-to players. You need to go-to action, and you need to live with the results. And they don't have go-to players to make that happen at all times. Jalen Green, I don't think he's on that level yet of being a consistent like closer. And outside of him, there's no like scorer. Fred Van Vliet is solid, but he's not necessarily a scorer. Brooks ain't a scorer. Um, Jabari Smith ain't a scorer. Like Amon Thompson, as good as he is, isn't a scorer. So like they're limited options in the final 5 minutes, and the Warriors have Steph and Jimmy. And so I think that's going to be the determining factor in these games. It would have been very interesting to see how Game Two turned out if Jimmy Butler doesn't get hurt. Um, but nonetheless, he is hurt. And going back to my point on them not having enough scores, the Houston Rockets, if Jimmy Butler's out, now that evens the series, because with Jimmy Butler out, they only have to worry about Steph as the go-to guy in the final 5 minutes. Which if Jalen Green can play up to par, now you can kind of match him at least in some way. Obviously, Steph is gonna be more consistent, more reliable, but at least you have the chance to match it. Because with Steph and Jimmy, you don't have a chance to match it because you don't have that go-to guy, that second go-to guy. But at least with Steph, you can kind of force Steph to, you can kind of at least trap him if you want to, and make somebody else beat you, whether it's Moody, Pajemski, whoever else out there, Kaminga, whoever else is out there is going to now have to beat you. And that's another key component now. If Jimmy Butler is forced to miss time, we'll see if he misses game three. They got to play Jonathan Kaminga. I thought Jonathan Kaminga should have been playing anyway because there's certain things he can do that can help the the Warriors and things that they're lacking right now, especially in this series because they're so undersized. They need some more athleticism, some more defense, like point of attack defense kind of players, so they can get some defensive rebounds and get out in transition and cause havoc that way. Because that'll help them a lot, so they don't have to keep battling on the boards with Steven Adams and Shingun. But I think Steve Kerr believes he's smarter than everybody else. Same way he benched Jason Tatum in the Olympics. You telling me Jason Tatum gonna get no minutes, bro? You came to Jason Tatum, one of the top five players, 5 or 6 players on the planet, and you decided before the game that he couldn't play at all. It's one thing for the game to just go one way and you feel like okay maybe Jason Tatum is not going to play right now, but you came into a game saying Jason Tatum was not going to play, one of the 5 or 6 best players on the planet. That's ridiculous, and I feel like he's just thinks he's too smart because there's no way you can tell me Jonathan Kaminga can't come in and give you a good 10, 15 minutes. I'm not saying he has to shoot 20 shots. I'm not saying he needs to play 30 minutes. But you cannot tell me like he can't help this team in ways as good as Pajemski is, and he probably should start, and he's a great piece for them. There's things that Jonathan Kaminga simply can do because of his size, athleticism, that Pajemski can't do that'll help the Warriors in this series because they're not as athletic as the Rockets, and they don't have the length and size of the Rockets. But you know what would help them minimize some of that? Adding length and size and athleticism, which is everything that Jonathan Kaminga has. So he can come in and play in spurts and give you good minutes. But Steve Kerr believes he's the smartest person on the planet. And I don't believe he is. So we'll see if he fixes that problem. And that's where I see that series going. I think Jonathan Kaminga has to be a big factor of it. I thought he had to be a big factor of every series. And so, but definitely without Jimmy Butler, he's definitely got to play. Definitely got to play. So that's where that series is at right now. It's kind of in limbo because of the Jimmy Butler injury. So kind of the people and us fans are kind of just waiting to see if Jimmy They said he's getting an MRI today. So we're waiting to see his status going into Game 3. But his injury evens this series up a whole lot. With that said, the 3-6 matchup, Lakers, Minnesota Timberwolves. Game 1, let's just start with Game 1. Lakers came out. First 3-4 minutes were good. Luka was sensational. Lakers were playing on all cylinders. Timberwolves called timeout, and from there the game switches. The Timberwolves get back in the game because the Lakers got up early, like a good 8 early. Timberwolves got in the game and they started being aggressive, and the Lakers never matched that intensity. And once they didn't match that intensity, the game was over with. Minnesota shot 21 of 42 from deep, 50%. And if they shoot like that, they're gonna win the NBA title. So my thought after game 1 was the Lakers don't need to overreact to the shooting because I don't believe that they're going to shoot 21 to 42 from the field again. But from deep. But what the Lakers do got to do is up that intensity and up that aggressiveness because they gave up too many open looks in game 1. And what they did in game 2, they came out and they played aggressive. and they up that physicality and they play playoff basketball, which is what they didn't do in game one. They were not ready for playoff basketball that the Minnesota Timberwolves were ready for. And the Lakers pushed back in game two and even up the series. The Lakers are still have not played their best game. So what is good about that is the Lakers haven't played their best game, and they got more games coming up to where they can reach their full potential. Because we know if the Lakers are hitting on all cylinders, I don't believe a team can beat them because you got Luka, LeBron, and AR. And I don't believe another team can outscore all of them. Especially, and if they're hitting on all cylinders, that means Gabe's hitting a couple shots, Dorian, Rui. So I just don't know if you can match their firepower. And the Lakers have already been seen as a good defensive team when they're locked in. So um, we still haven't had our best game, and I believe that game one was the best game that the Timberwolves could have, shooting 21 of 42 from deep. That's as good as you're going to get, pretty much. So I believe they've already had their best game, and then the Lakers locked in game two and showed what they can do to that Minnesota offense. They held them to 85 points. So you hold a team to 85 points, you're gonna win that game 9 times out of 10. Um, that's as close to a surefire W as you could possibly get. And so going forward, I just think the Lakers need to maintain that physicality because if the Lakers maintain the physicality, they're a better team than the Minnesota Timberwolves. I don't like I said, the Minnesota Timberwolves can't match the Lakers' offensive firepower, and the Lakers can play defense. So it's not like they're lacking in that department. What I would say, what I've seen so far that would help the Lakers' offense kind of be what it should be is they're attacking a lot of first the Minnesota game plan is just to leave Rudy Gobert on that island. And I believe the Lakers are falling into that trap. Not necessarily that it's a trap because they're obviously going to win that matchup a lot, whether it's AR, LeBron, or Luca on being single guarded by Rudy Gobert. But it's not allowing the other guys to get into rhythm, I believe. And I think they need to get those other guys in rhythm a little bit earlier so they're good and going when the third, fourth quarter comes. They're already in rhythm, ready to knock down shots and play basketball. So what I would say for the Lakers is don't fall in love with that switch. Obviously, you're going to attack it at times because it's too easy not to attack at times. But the ball, when you attacking it because it's one on one, everybody else is just standing around and not being involved. So I think you get these guys involved, and obviously in the flow of that, you can every couple possessions you're going to have that switch, and you can just take it because he can't guard anybody out there. He can't guard anybody in the post neither. But when you have that mismatch and it's easy to do it, and you can get by him in 1-2 moves and just go make a play, do that. But don't just sit there and dance for 15 seconds dancing with Rudy Gobert because that's kind of what they want. Because that means the ball's not moving, nobody's cutting, whatever. So don't fall into that trap would be what I'd say for the Lakers because it'll get other guys involved. What you can also do if you're gonna attack that matchup, attack it. Obviously, you always got to attack the score because you don't want to be passive. But when they send, if they're gonna send help, or I find open man and let them get shots because if they get in rhythm early, if you get Rui involved early, Dodo, Gabe, might be a game where Dalton Connect has to come in and hit 2 or 3 threes. That allows them to get involved, and now, excuse me, the Minnesota Timberwolves are after poison because they don't have an option now because they can't guard Luca, they can't guard AR, they can't guard Brown, and now these guys are making shots. They're at your mercy. So if I was the Lakers, I'd do that. For Minnesota, for the Lakers too, I'd also make Ant-Man play hero ball. Make him shoot 25, 30, 40 shots. Make him feel like he has to win the game by himself. You take all the rest of those guys out, they're not winning. They can only beat you Lakers if they're making shots like they did in game one. If DiVincenzo's on, if Naz Reid's on, if Mike Conley's on, if Julius Randle, if all these guys are on, they can beat you. If it's just Ant-Man trying to force his way to a W, I don't believe they can beat you because he can't outscore. I don't know if he can outscore Luca by himself. Definitely not LeBron and AR on top of that. So if I'm the Lakers, I do that. From the Minnesota perspective, I believe I just don't know if they have enough firepower as I mentioned. But I think for them, they're probably going to try to up the physicality a little bit more, especially now they're at homes, because so they might get more favorable calls in this matchup. So if I'm the Lakers, be careful for that. You got to play aggressive, but you got to be able to play defense without fouling. But they're probably going to up the aggressiveness and try to force more turnovers. I think for them, they got to get out in transition to get easy points against the Lakers because the Lakers could match up well against them on defense. And so I feel like because they don't have the firepower outside of Ant-Man, they need to get easy buckets, and that's going to start a transition. So look for that for both of them. Good series though. Still got Lakers. As I remember when I was talking about Ravon, I said I wanted 5 or 6. It was going to determine based off game one because I felt Minnesota would probably get game one just because of the history of Bron, Luca in game ones. They typically lose them as it's the fill out game, but so Lakers should still win pretty easily, but they got to make sure they lock in. They get game three, they probably win in five, I believe, because I believe if they get game three, they get game four as well. So they should, and they come back home where they've been one of the 2 or 3 best home teams all year. So they should lock in and make sure they lock in for that. Uh, Final series that I wanted to talk about, probably the best series, Denver Nuggets and the Los Angeles Clippers. This series has been fantastic. I believe each team let one get away. I believe the Clippers let game one get away. Nuggets, not so much to the degree that I believe the Clippers let go of game one and that I believe the Clippers let go of game one. But in game two, there's a lot of uncharacteristic mistakes late from the Nuggets by like Jokic having bad turnovers that you don't typically see. But this series has been the best series of all the series, I believe. It's coming down to the wire. Game one, the Clippers held a lead pretty much the entire game, and then they pretty much at the end, what hurt them was they couldn't rebound. They haven't been able to rebound well in either game, but definitely game one hurt them more. Um, Specifically in the final 5 minutes, that crunch time, the final 5 minutes at overtime, bro, they allowed Russ to get 0 boards. They allowed Jokic to get them, and they allowed Porter to get them. Everybody got them. And the problem with that is they were playing good defense. They played good initial defense pretty much the whole game. But the problem is the defensive possession isn't over until they get the defensive rebound. And when they're not getting that rebound, it's allowing the Nuggets to get points when they shouldn't be because they haven't done well in their offensive sets. But now, off of the offensive rebounds, they get easy layups on putbacks, or it's guys wide open on threes because the defense have scattered on the defensive rebound that they didn't get. So that's the Clippers killed themselves with 0 boards in that first game, and the Nuggets were able to come back and save their home court for game one. But now going into game two, they did lose home court because they lost this game. And as I mentioned, a lot of uncharacteristics from Jokic in turning the ball over. But what was big in this game was no doubt about it was Kawhi Leonard, big time Kawhi. He missed 1 shot in the first half. He missed 2 shots in the second half. Bro was on a mission. He was on a mission. He was like, "We not losing this game," and he knew it because they couldn't lose that game. If they lose that game, they probably lose the series. But they got that game because of Kawhi. Obviously, James Harden pitched in, which is good. I said James Harden has to match Jamal Murray. For the Clippers to win, James Harden has to match Jamal Murray, and so far he's done that. He's done that through 2 games. Now they're going on. Now they're going coming back home. Come on, James, keep it up, keep playing. Don't force. He forced a couple bad turnovers in game two that almost sold them again, but luckily Kawhi was there to save the day. He put the Superman cape on. But as long as James Harden is there, playing well and not shooting them out of the game, they're going to be good. And remember what I said? I said if Vita Zubac, he's got to come and play. He's got to make Jokic work on both ends. If you make Jokic work on both ends, they're going to be fine. And he's made him work so far. He's giving him points. He's giving the Clippers points, and he's making Jokic work and he's making Jokic work on offense. So he's doing what he's supposed to do. This series, I believe, is still going to be a 7-game series. I wouldn't say there's much to critique from either team. I think for the Clippers, like I said, it'd be the offensive rebound to make sure you clear up the boards, and then for the Clippers, it would be turnovers. That also kind of hurt them in game one. I mean, and then for the Nuggets, it'd be turnovers. Turnovers hurt Clippers a little bit in game one. But this is going to be a game-to-game thing. I don't have any like big critique from either team outside of rebounding for them and then the uncharacteristic turnovers from the Nuggets. This series is going to be back and forth, and I can't wait to see how it goes. And I'm going to make sure I tap back in. But yeah, man, I just want to tap in and give a quick breakdown of these games, man. So that's been episode 9. Make sure you hit that like button, the subscribe button. Make sure y'all tap in. Follow, share. Yes, sir. NFL draft is today. So I'll make sure I'll tap into that on the next one, along with the rest of the playoff games and how they're going. But with that said, the boys out. Peace out.